John Wayne. The man who never flinched on screen. The man who faced down outlaws, survived gunfights, and stood taller than fear itself in over 170 films. But behind that legendary toughness was a man running out of time. In his final months, doctors gave him a number, 6 months to live. And in those 6 months, John Wayne didn't ask for one more movie role. He didn't ask for awards or applause. He asked for something far simpler, far more human. One last chance to see his daughter. This is the story of the real John Wayne, stripped of the cowboy hat and the Hollywood lights. A father, running out of time, trying to make peace before the curtain finally gill. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. To the world, John Wayne wasn't just an actor. He was an idea. Born Marion Morrison in 1907, he became Duke, the embodiment of the American West. He rode horses through dusty frontier towns, stood up to villains twice his size, and delivered lines with a calm, unshakable confidence that made audiences believe nothing could ever bring him down. For decades, he was the face of strength in American cinema, rugged, fearless, larger than life. But off-camera, John Wayne was just a man, and like every man, he was not invincible. Years before his final diagnosis, he had already survived one brutal battle with cancer, losing a lung in the process. He joked about it publicly, calling himself a survivor, even using his ordeal to encourage others facing the same disease. To the public, it looked like he had beaten it. But cancer doesn't always stay beaten. Years later, it came back, this time in his stomach, and this time it didn't ask politely. The diagnosis was serious. The prognosis even more so. Doctors estimated he had only months left. For a man who built his entire identity on resilience, this was a different kind of battle, one he couldn't outact, out-tough, or outride. And in this quiet, private war, something interesting happened. The legend started fading into the background, and the father started stepping forward. What mattered to him in his final stretch of life wasn't his legacy on screen. It was the people he loved off it, especially the relationships he had spent years too busy, too famous, or too far away to fully nurture. John Wayne's personal life was as complicated as any Hollywood story. Married 3 times, he fathered 7 children across those marriages. His career demanded everything from him: long shooting schedules, constant travel, late nights memorizing scripts, and an image to maintain both on and off screen. Being Duke was a full-time job, and it often left little room for being simply Dad. Like many actors of his era, John Wayne's relationship with his children was shaped heavily by distance, both physical and emotional. Film sets took him across deserts, mountains, and foreign countries for months at a time. His daughters and sons grew up watching their father conquer the screen, while sometimes longing for more ordinary, everyday moments with him, moments other families took for granted. Among his children, one daughter held a particularly tender place in his later life. As the family dynamic shifted over the years through divorce, remarriage, and the natural chaos of a large blended family, the bond between father and daughter went through its own evolution. Closeness, distance, and eventually an effort to reconnect as both of them grew older. Friends and biographers who studied his life often noted the contrast between John Wayne the icon and John Wayne the father. On set, he was commanding, decisive, untouchable. At home, especially in quieter years, he became reflective, sometimes regretful about the time the industry had taken from his family life. Like many men of his generation, expressing that vulnerability wasn't easy. He showed love through provision, through presence when he could manage it, and through the kind of quiet care that didn't always translate into words. As fame and fortune grew, so did the awareness that none of it could replace time lost. Several people close to him noted that in his later years, John Wayne spoke more about family, more about the children he didn't get to know as deeply as he wished, and more about wanting to make things right before time ran out completely. This emotional undercurrent became more urgent the moment his health took its final, irreversible turn. Suddenly, the busy schedules, the press tours, the award ceremonies, none of it mattered. What mattered was repairing what time and fame had quietly worn down. And for John Wayne, his daughter represented exactly that. A relationship he wanted to hold on to, strengthen, and cherish, while he still had the chance. The diagnosis came like a quiet earthquake. No warning, no mercy, just a doctor's voice delivering news that changed everything. Stomach cancer, advanced, aggressive, the kind that doesn't leave room for false hope. For a man who had already fought and won against cancer once before, hearing those words again must have felt like a cruel repeat of history. Except this time, the odds weren't in his favor. 6 months. That was the estimate doctors gave him. 6 months to settle everything that mattered. 6 months to say what needed to be said and do what needed to be done. For someone whose entire public identity was built on strength, control, and toughness, accepting a terminal diagnosis is its own kind of battle. Those close to him during this period described a man who, despite the physical toll, tried to maintain his composure, the same steady resolve he carried in every film. But behind that composure was a deep internal shift. Priorities that once revolved around scripts, schedules, and public appearances quietly rearranged themselves around something far more personal: his family. Word of his condition spread carefully among close friends and family first, long before it became public knowledge. For his children, the news was devastating. The man who had always seemed larger than life, who had survived gunfights on screen and cancer once before in real life, was now facing something even he couldn't outlast. It was during this period that John Wayne began reflecting more openly on his relationships. Friends recalled him speaking about regrets, not professional ones, but personal ones. Time missed. Conversations left unsaid. Moments with his children that career demands had quietly stolen from him over the decades. And among those thoughts, one relationship kept resurfacing in his mind: his bond with his daughter. The closeness they once shared, the distance that crept in over the years, and the quiet hope that there might still be time to mend it. As his health continued to decline, the urgency grew. Pain increased. Strength decreased. The man who once seemed unstoppable on screen now needed help simply getting through each day. But even as his body weakened, his focus sharpened. He didn't want medical updates or sympathy calls dominating his remaining time. He wanted something simpler, something deeply human: to see his daughter, face to face, while he still could. This wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic reconciliation speeches. It was about presence, about sitting together, even in silence, and feeling that connection one more time before it was too late. For a man whose life had been defined by larger-than-life roles, his final wish was remarkably, beautifully ordinary. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. As his condition worsened, those around John Wayne began quietly making arrangements to fulfill what mattered most to him: time with his daughter. There was no fanfare, no press release, no public announcement. This wasn't for cameras or headlines. This was personal, private, and deeply human. The reunion, when it finally happened, wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't need to be. After years of a relationship shaped by distance, busy schedules, and the quiet wear and tear that affects so many father-daughter relationships in the public eye, this moment was simply about being together, fully present, without distractions, without the noise of Hollywood pulling either of them away. Those who witnessed moments like this in his final months described a man stripped of his on-screen armor. Gone was the commanding presence of Duke. In its place was simply a father, tired, weakened by illness, but emotionally present in a way he hadn't always been able to be during the busier years of his career. Conversations during this time were said to be quiet, reflective, and filled with the kind of honesty that often only emerges when time becomes precious. There was reportedly talk of childhood memories, of moments missed, of gratitude for the relationship they still had, despite everything that life and fame had thrown at it. There was likely laughter mixed with tears, the kind of bittersweet exchange that happens when two people who love each other are forced to confront the reality of limited time. For John Wayne, this moment represented something money, fame, and decades of cinematic legacy could never buy: peace. The peace of knowing his daughter was there, that their bond, despite everything, had endured. The peace of saying, whether through words or simply through presence, that she mattered more than any role he'd ever played. It's said that John Wayne, even in his weakened state, found moments of his familiar humor during this time, perhaps trying to lighten the heaviness of the situation, the way he often did on set when scenes grew too intense. But underneath that humor was undeniable emotion. A father holding on to every passing moment as if trying to memorize it, knowing it might be one of his last. For his daughter, this time together likely carried its own complicated weight: joy at reconnecting, mixed with the painful awareness that this closeness was arriving alongside an ending. Many children of dying parents describe this exact paradox, feeling grateful for the time while devastated by the reason behind it. What makes this moment so powerful and so deeply relatable isn't the celebrity status involved. It's the universal truth at its core, that no amount of fame, success, or accomplishment ever fully replaces the simple, irreplaceable value of family connection. John Wayne, who built an empire of toughness and legend, ultimately found his most meaningful, most human moment in something every person can understand: choosing to spend his limited time with the people he loved most. This wasn't the John Wayne audiences saw on screen for decades. This was the real one. Vulnerable, honest, finally letting go of the armor that fame demanded, if only for these final, precious months. As the weeks passed, John Wayne's health continued its inevitable decline. The man who once filled movie screens with unshakable strength now needed quiet, rest, and the comfort of those closest to him. Hospital visits became more frequent. Public appearances, which had already slowed dramatically, came to a complete stop. The world that once watched his every move on screen now waited anxiously for updates on his condition. On June 11, 1979, John Wayne passed away in Los Angeles, surrounded by the people who meant the most to him. The news sent shockwaves across the world. Tributes poured in from fellow actors, political figures, and millions of fans who had grown up watching him defend justice on screen. Flags were lowered. Newspapers ran front-page tributes. Hollywood mourned the loss of one of its most defining figures. But for his family, the loss was deeply personal. Beyond the legend, beyond the awards and the box office records, they had lost a father, a husband, a grandfather, a man whose final months had been less about his legacy and more about reconnecting with the people he loved. In the years following his death, his children, including his daughter, spoke about him not just as a Hollywood icon, but as a complicated, deeply human father. One who, like many parents, made mistakes, missed moments, but ultimately tried, in whatever time he had left, to make things right. Today, John Wayne's legacy lives on through his films, his statues, his enduring image as the quintessential American cowboy. Streets, airports, and award ceremonies still carry his name. New generations continue discovering his work, captivated by the same screen presence that defined Hollywood's golden age. But perhaps his most powerful legacy isn't found in any of his 170-plus films. It's found in that final act, a dying man's choice to prioritize family over fame, connection over career, presence over legacy. In choosing to spend his last strength on reconnecting with his daughter, John Wayne left behind a final lesson far more valuable than any line he ever delivered on screen. That no matter how much we accomplish in life, the people we love are ultimately what matter most when time runs out. John Wayne spent decades teaching the world about courage, strength, and standing tall in the face of danger. But his final months taught something far more important. That true strength isn't just facing down villains on screen. It's having the courage to be vulnerable, to admit regret, and to choose love and family when time is running out. His story reminds us that no fame, fortune, or legacy can replace genuine connection with the people we love. Sometimes the most powerful moments in life aren't the loud, dramatic ones. They're the quiet ones, shared with the people who matter most before it's too late. If this story touched you, give this video a like and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood's biggest legends. And stay tuned, because our next video might just be the one that moves you even more.